All right, so now I've made my spot illustration. I've put it up as products, but now I'm going to play with printing options and color separating it and really controlling that. So this is my yellow halftone pattern that I use bitmap to convert to. And now I want to just color it in all with yellow. So what I could do is select all the empty space, select the inverse, which is now all those black dots that are derived from the yellow layer. And I could fill them in, say edit, fill, or use the paint bucket with a certain color. And what I like to do when I'm selecting colors for printing is say only web colors. It's easier to kind of chunk the colors. Select them clearly and fill it with 100% yellow that way, like so. Or I can do what's called a color overlay, which will give me a better job actually. And you just double click on the layer, and we're just going to use a layer style, color overlay. You see how it will replace everything, and then pick that yellow. And now we have a nice solid yellow everywhere that we need a black dot. And then I save that as an RGB mode file, not merged. And I'm going to save that as a PNG onto the desktop. So a yellow halftone pattern PNG. I've got a lot in my title there. To the desktop, and I can see it right here. See if it updated. Yes, so now I have the yellow one right there. And that's how it would look. So if I only printed it with one color, that's what it would look like. Okay, now let's imagine doing that with all the other colors. So I'll go through it really quick. Here's my CMY colors. This is my PNG. I go to channels. I'm in CMYK mode. I'm now going to go to the black layer. This is what's most commonly used. I'm going to select only the black channel, rather, and I'm going to convert it first to grayscale. I have to flatten the image, and I have to discard the other colors. And then I'm going to convert from grayscale to bitmap. You can only convert to bitmap through grayscale. I'm going to keep the output resolution high. I'm going to use a halftone screen. I'm going to use a frequency of 20, but this time, because it's my blacks, I'm going to change the angle from 90 to 45. I want round, and now I have round halftone pattern of the black dots at a 45-degree angle. I then convert it back to grayscale at a 1-to-1 size ratio, and then convert it back to CMY color or RGB color. And now I'm going to select all the white space with the magic wand contiguous off, select the inverse, so it's just the black dots, duplicate that onto a new layer so there's nothing behind it, and then I'm going to double click on that layer and do a color overlay. And in this case, I actually don't need a color overlay because it's going to be the black channel. And so then I save that as my black halftone pattern as a PNG onto the desktop. Okay, go back in my history, do the magenta, isolate that, convert its mode, grayscale first, flattened, other colors discarded, then change to bitmap mode and make all my selections. Now this is magenta, so I need to remember what that angle is going to be. And magenta is at a 75-degree angle, 30 degrees off of the black. There I have the magentas. But it doesn't look like magenta yet, so I want it to have that color. So I'm going to select all the, first I have to convert it back to grayscale, 1-to-1, then to RGB color. Then I'm going to select all the white, select the inverse, duplicate it all. Remember, these are just pure black dots now. See, it's pure black dots. Photoshop will give it that slightly gray back circle, but that's going to be replaced now when we do color overlay. And I'm going to overlay it not with red, but with magenta. The purest magenta we can for classic color separations. Then I'm going to save that as my magenta PNG. So right now we have black, we have yellow, we have magenta. We just need cyan. But this is a lot of work, and it's easy to automatize. That's why I made it an action for you. Now I go back in my history. Right after I converted it to CMYK, go to channels, isolate the cyan layer. And remember, we learn through repetition. That's why I'm going through all of this. Image mode, grayscale first, flatten layers, discard colors, bitmap, halftone screen, same resolution, frequency of 20, but the angle is now going to be either 15 degrees or 105 degrees. They're the same things, but that's for the cyan at around. And now I have that. You can see those black dots. Okay? I convert it back to grayscale at a 1-to-1 ratio, then back to RGB, and now I select out the whites in order to select the inverse and get all the black dots, and duplicate onto a flat layer, and now I'm going to replace this color doing color overlay with cyan. Okay, so now I need to save that to the desktop, and now I've got all the things I need to actually bring these together. Save. Great. Okay, now what I can do, actually, let's see, is go back in my history to before I even converted it to CMYK. This is just my PNG. And now on top of that, I'm going to bring in my halftone patterns, just so you can see the difference. But first I'm going to fill in a layer with pure white to run behind everything. All right, so first, you usually start with your lightest color first. I'm going to bring in my yellow. I drop that down, and you can see what that looks like. I place it, and these are my yellow dots. On their own, on white, they just look like that. This is with my full color illustration behind it. Okay, now I'm going to bring in my magenta. There it is. Drop it on, place it. That's what yellow with magenta looks like. And you see how they're offset from each other? And if I wanted cleaner dots, I could just do a higher resolution, like 650 instead of 350. Okay. Now to make it look like real printing, I actually want to make the ink somewhat transparent. So the magenta, I'm going to make 70% opacity. And look what happens. We start to get reds, right? Or what you can also do is just use a different blending mode like multiply, and that will really make it clear. So now where the yellows and reds are overlapping, you get that 100% red that comes from the yellow and the magenta overlapping. Okay, next I'm going to bring in my cyan. Drop that down, and I'm going to set that on multiply. Now my cyan was a little bit bluer, so let me shift its hue towards something a little bit more green. And in order to do that, I have to rasterize the smart layer. So I'm going to duplicate it. Well, work with me here. Duplicate it, turn off the one, and then rasterize this so that I can play with its hue. I'm not going to change its saturation at all. I'm just going to change its hue to be a little bit more on the turquoise side. Like that. That's a better cyan. And we start to see all the colors mix now. If I have it on multiply mode, you see how it's overlapping with everything? There we go. Then with white behind it, that's what I get. I might decide I want the yellow to be on top more. I might decide I want the cyan to be underneath the yellow. And I can play with the order of the layers for effect. And then let's see what this would print like on a gray background. Edit fill, 50% gray. Color separations. So what I like to do, instead of just using pure color separations, which look pretty, they look very vintage, but I like to overlay those on top of my actual illustration. So here's my full illustration. And now just to make it a little bit more interesting looking, with all that flat color and duotone color behind, I can offset them a little bit. Like you see the yellow's already offset. I can use the nudge tool and just kind of play with where they are. I can play with their transparency as well. So I don't want to turn yellow onto transparency, but maybe I don't want it just quite as strong, so I'll put it at like a lower opacity. And now it just gives a little bit more oomph to all these flat colors, because they're made up of their component inks. So it's something I want you to play with, see if you like. I can also try layer effects, even on my smart layers. So for instance, on my cyans, or here, let's do it on my magentas, which are a major color, right? Or I might decide I don't want magenta at all. But if I double click on that, I can decide to put a little stroke around each dot. And I can make that stroke any color I want, any size I want, and basically bolden those dots with deep red, or with pink, or with white. And then I can choose the opacity of it as well. So there's lots of things you can do to kind of modify, even with the smart layers, just to brighten up those areas that have white added in. So you see those little white halos now at a low opacity. You can just play with different aspects. So I'm going to save this as my color separated one. Just maybe to play with later. And I'll keep it as a Photoshop file with all these different layers. And actually just those, without the yellow, I think it works pretty well. Maybe if I move the yellow down behind. That's pretty strong. Okay. Okay, so we've used color separations. All the inks are lining up at slightly different angles so that they overlap with each other and give us what was called these Gaussian roses. And it's pretty compelling. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is how I've automatized this for you. So what if you just have your PNG? You go back to when that was. So I just have my PNG. It's in RGB mode. So this is just like the one you turned in, and you want to try out this color separation thing. Well, if you go to your actions and you go to Carl's Customized Effects, you will see a folder. Oh, where is it in actions? Oh, color seps. It's right above Carl's Customized